Hey everybody, it's Alexis Styes with another video brought to you by the Set Schedule Network. Now today I want to talk to you about investment properties. Specifically, I want to go over 6 red flags that you should be aware of anytime that you're determining whether or not to purchase an investment property. But before I get into all of that, I do want to remind you, if you enjoyed this, please do remember to like the video and also subscribe to Set Schedule's YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified each week when new content goes live. Let's get started. So for starters, what is an investment property? An investment property is a term that refers to any property that's purchased for the explicit purpose of flipping or holding and renting. Now, in best case scenario, investment properties can be extremely lucrative. But in the worst case scenario, they can become financial drains that leave you with a negative cash flow. Now, many of the variables that you'll want to take into account when determining whether or not to purchase an investment property will be personalized. These include things like what's your expected time frame for return, and will you be selling or renting the property afterwards? However, there are also larger general red flags that you should be aware of. Now, none of these red flags are necessarily deal breakers in and of themselves. However, anytime you encounter any of these red flags, that should give you pause for serious concern. Smart investors take the time to get to know all potential risks prior to making an investment. That way you'll know if the investment will be profitable for you. So let's go over some of those red flags now. Red flag number 1. You can't view or tour the entire property, or the seller asks you to waive your right to inspect. This is a huge red flag for obvious reasons. Anytime a seller is resistant to showing you the entire property or asks you to waive your right to inspect, that typically indicates that they are trying to hide something. Now, a little bit of reluctance to show the entire property is not uncommon, especially if the property has a room that might need more rehabilitation than the rest. Now, typically this reluctance will come from a fear of the seller that by showing you the entire property, they could potentially threaten the sale. However, if ever you are met with an outright refusal to show you the property or a request to waive your right to inspect, that is a serious red flag and should be regarded with severe skepticism. Now, this should go without saying, but do not ever purchase a property that you yourself have not seen. Even if you're planning on demolishing the property, it is still advantageous for you to tour every room. Maybe there's a room on the property that's infested or full of hazardous waste that you can't just take to the dump. These will result in additional costs for repair and rehab, and you will need to factor these into your budget before purchasing the property so that you can know whether or not it will be profitable for you. Red flag number 2, random fresh paint in odd places. Now, when somebody is preparing to list a property, it's common that they will do certain projects to spruce up the property. And often this includes painting interior or exterior walls. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you notice fresh paint in odd places, like the ceiling or under the sink, that should give you cause for concern and often indicates that there might be mold or water damage that the seller is trying to keep from you. Red flag number 3, an older HVAC system, even if it was recently repaired. HVAC systems, that's heating, ventilation, air conditioning. HVAC systems are almost always a necessity to offer in today's real estate market in order to stay competitive. If you are going to purchase a property that has an older HVAC system, it's worth looking into the cost of replacing it. Even if you're not going to replace the entire unit, you still want to look into the cost of repairs. And you want to factor those in because most likely you will have to conduct ongoing repairs if it's an older system. And these are also costs that you don't want to be surprised by after purchasing the property. Red flag number 4, structural issues. If you're looking for an investment property to rehab or revamp, pay close attention to any indications you see of structural damage. Now, these include things like uneven floors, cracks in your basement or exterior walls, or even sticking windows and doors. These are just a few indicators of structural damage. It's not at all encompassing, and that's why it's very important that you take a professional with you who's knowledgeable about these issues to inspect the property prior to purchasing it. On the other hand, if your plan is to demolish and rebuild, structural damage may not be as much a cause of concern for you. However, you should still take note of any structural issues you see, as often these will indicate larger foundational issues that you will need to take into account when rebuilding. Red flag number 5, flood zones, high crime rates, and bad school districts. Many investors will argue that these factors are the only red flags that are absolute deal breakers. That's because while you might be able to spend the time and effort to replace an HVAC system or rehab an infested room, no amount of time or money you spend is going to change the neighborhood that the property is located in. While neighborhoods do often change over time, especially with forces like gentrification, this isn't something that you can count on. So it's safest to assume that the neighborhood will remain the same for the foreseeable future. And this also applies to flood zones. Now, these are the factors that can seriously affect the resale or rental value of the property and that you largely have no control over, which is why it's so important that you explore not just the property, but also the neighborhood that that property is located within. Red flag number 6, huge lots or huge units. Now, huge units and huge lots are harder to rent out. While not always the case, they will typically require more maintenance than smaller units on smaller lots. In addition, people who are looking for properties on 3,500 square feet or more are typically going to be looking to buy rather than rent. If you are looking to purchase a huge unit or a huge lot for the purposes of renting it out after, make sure you have a solid game plan for how you intend to market that property, and make sure you factor those marketing costs into your budget prior to purchasing the property. Investment properties offer great potential for growing your wealth. At the same time, they offer great potential for depleting that wealth if they turn into financial black holes. If you're looking to purchase an investment property, do your due diligence. Take your time, explore the neighborhood, explore every nook and cranny of that property. And any red flags that you come across, make sure you are factoring those into your risk and cost analysis prior to purchasing the property. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. If you guys enjoyed this content and you want some more, who doesn't want more free content? Make sure you check out our blog at setschedule.com or our podcast, Meet the Agent and Mindset. Both of these are available anywhere you download your podcasts. You can also always reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at Set Schedule, or you can reach out to me directly with some ideas for some upcoming material that you'd like to see at media@setschedule.com. Thanks, guys.